The banquet hall was lit like a stage. Crystal chandeliers, velvet chairs, mirrored walls that reflected wealth back at itself. Phoenix in winter is a strange illusion. Chill enough to wear tailored suits, dry enough that everything feels pressed and preserved. Even the smiles, especially the smiles. It was a fundraiser, private school gala, Brittany's school, a place with marble floors and brass handrails, where the parking lot was split between Teslas and black Suburbans with tinted glass. Lisa loved those evenings. She liked when the right people saw her in the right light, liked when heads turned as we walked in, when hands found her shoulder and said, "Oh, Lisa, you look amazing." She did. She always did. I made sure of that. Her dress that night cost more than a month of my payroll. Custom. She never said thank you. That wasn't her language. I had barely touched the wine in front of me. A deep red. Expensive, judging by the bottle they kept flashing around. I didn't ask. I never did. My role was clear. Smile. Fade into the background. Lisa was in her element. Laughing easily. Leaning into conversations like they were flirtations. Her voice sweetened just enough to hide the edge. The table was full: donors, headmasters, board members, mothers with plastic skin and tired husbands. Brittany sat between two of her friends, her posture perfect, her expression bored. She was 16 but dressed 25, and no one dared correct her. When Lisa raised her glass for a casual toast, I thought it was about the school. I thought it was about scholarships or success or the new wing her committee had lobbied for. But no. She looked at me with that warm, sharp smile and said, "And this?" Her fingers grazed my wrist like I was furniture. "This is our family wallet." Laughter. Too quick. Too loud. It rippled through the table like a dropped match in dry brush. Someone clapped. Someone else whistled. Brittany didn't even look up. She just sipped from her glass and added, flatly, "He still silently agrees anyway." More laughter. I laughed too, or something like it. I smiled the way men do when they're bleeding in public and trying not to stain the floor. I lifted my glass, nodded, let the moment pass through me. No protest, no shame shown, just the script. Inside, something snapped. Or maybe it didn't snap. Maybe it just settled, shifted. I stood slowly, excused myself quietly. No one noticed. They were too busy marveling at how clever Lisa was, how obedient I seemed. I walked out of the hall into the lobby, past the echo of laughter, past the hum of jazz from the live band. The hallway was long and cold, lined with portraits of donors and plaques with gilded names. I had donated last year. Quietly, my name wasn't on the wall. The club manager nodded at me as I passed. I didn't nod back. The men's room was empty. Marble counters, gold faucets, everything polished and used. I washed my hands even though they weren't dirty. I looked at myself in the mirror. There I was, dark suit, salt in my beard, eyes that hadn't really slept in a year. I looked successful. I looked calm. But I wasn't. That wasn't the first insult. Not by a mile. It was just the first one I truly heard. There had been others. They came as jokes, as sarcasm, as, "Oh my God, he's always working," or "Brittany's school is so lucky. My husband practically funds their art program," or "Don't bother asking him, just show him the invoice." They said these things like I wasn't in the room. They were right. I wasn't. I was in the crawl space fixing pipes. I was on site reviewing permits. I was filing taxes, handling payroll, responding to clients who thought 10 p.m. was a perfectly acceptable time to call. I wasn't invited to the conversations that shaped our family. I was only looped in when it came time to pay for them. When Brittany wanted to switch schools, Lisa didn't consult me. She just handed me the new tuition figures and said, "It's a better environment." When the kitchen was remodeled without my input, I walked in to find the old counters torn out and a designer scribbling blueprints. "She needed an island," Lisa explained. "It's where everyone gathers. Everyone except me. The house? In my name. The mortgage? On my back. The vehicles, insurance, utilities? Run through my accounts. The vacations? booked with my points. Lisa called it family support. She told her friends I took care of everything. They called me dependable, a rock. Brittany told people I owned a construction company, that I was always building something. She never said I built her life, that I bankrolled her future, that every door opened for her because I had paved the way, dollar by dollar, year by year. She didn't know what my office looked like at midnight. She never saw me crying in the garage when my back gave out from lifting alone. She never heard the calls from clients screaming over delays, demanding refunds I couldn't afford to give. But she had her school, her car, her iPhone upgrades and yoga retreats and weekend trips to L.A. for college prep. I didn't ask for gratitude. I never did. But respect? I thought I had earned at least that. Lisa was always careful with language. She didn't say, my husband. She said, Mike handles the business stuff. She didn't say, our home. She said, my kitchen. She didn't say, Brittany's father. She said, Mike's been around since she was little. Been around. Like a stray dog who never left. She liked to make it seem like I was lucky to be there. Like I had stumbled into a ready-made family and should thank her for the privilege. But I was the one who took Brittany to school when Lisa was too tired. I was the one who fixed her car when she hit a curb. I was the one who spent 2 weekends building a bookshelf for her dorm, only to have her say, Mom's ex could have just bought one. That ex, he sends Christmas cards. Sometimes. But he's her real dad. That's the phrase they used when they were angry. My real dad would never. I'll ask my real dad. You're not my real. Each time I swallowed it. Told myself they were just words. Told myself love was shown through presence, not DNA. Told myself I was the adult, the man, the provider. But in that hallway, with the sound of their laughter still echoing down the corridor, I saw what I had become. Not a man, not a father, just a resource, a feature of the household, like the thermostat, like the water heater, invisible until something goes wrong. And then I matter. I walked outside. The air was sharp, dry. Desert wind tugging at the collar of my shirt. My car was parked at the far end of the valet circle. I had given the keys to the attendant with a smile when we arrived. I wondered if he remembered me. I didn't wait for the valet. I walked, slowly. Each step felt like another brick falling out of the wall I had built around myself. This was what it had all come to. The hours, the labor, the dinners I missed, the birthdays I funded but wasn't asked to plan. I gave them my shoulders, my spine, my sweat. They gave me a punchline. Family wallet. It was funny, I suppose, because it was true. And I had let it be true for so long that I forgot it wasn't supposed to be. I drove home in silence. No music. No talk radio. Just the soft hum of tires against asphalt and the long stretch of suburban streets, lit by the same streetlights I paid taxes to maintain. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was lit. Warm, full, inviting. Lisa's SUV gleamed under the porch light. Brittany's sedan was parked crooked as always. The rear bumper still dented from that fender bender she swore wasn't her fault. I sat in the car, hands on the wheel, engine idling. I thought about walking in, pretending nothing had happened, letting the night slip into memory like all the others. But I knew. This wasn't just another wound. It was the diagnosis. The moment I finally read the chart, saw the scans, understood what the sickness was. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as finance. And I had no one to blame but myself. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not out of anger. Not to make a statement. Just to hear silence that belonged to me. Because everything else in that house belonged to someone else. Even me. The next morning, I woke before the house. The light hadn't broken yet, but the air was already warm, that dry Arizona kind of warm that clings to your ribs. I sat at the kitchen table, a black mug of coffee cradled in both hands, staring at nothing in particular. Lisa came in around 7. She didn't ask where I'd slept, just kissed the side of my head and said she'd scheduled a hair appointment. I nodded. Brittany came down an hour later, earbuds in, backpack slung lazily over one shoulder, and asked if her gas card had refilled. I said yes, because it had. At that point, it still had. I wasn't making a scene. That was never my style. You don't build houses by swinging hammers in anger. You build them carefully, with focus, precision. And that's what I did. They didn't notice the shift. Not at first. Because change done quietly doesn't sound like change. Sounds like nothing at all. I started with the accounts. The business, a contracting firm I had run for 13 years, had been tied to our family finances in all the ways you'd expect. Shared tax liabilities, a trust fund in progress, insurance policies that looped Lisa and Brittany into every emergency plan. My CPA had warned me about it once. Said, "Mike, you're giving them unrestricted access. You sure about that?" I told him yes, because back then, I thought love looked like exposure, like risk. Now I called him and said it was time to separate assets. No drama, I told him. Just draw the lines that should have been there from the start. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. I moved the business account to a new bank under a fresh LLC shell. The overhead stayed the same, the employees were paid. Nothing disrupted on the outside. But the access? That changed. Lisa no longer had permissions. Brittany's college planner didn't see my name on the scholarship consultations anymore. I redirected the house payments to a blind trust. Ownership had always been mine, but now it was legally cemented. No loopholes, no "we built this together" fantasy to argue over if things turned litigious. I wasn't prepping for war. I was just done pretending peace was mutual. I didn't cancel the cards. Not yet. I let the auto refills continue for 2 weeks. I watched them live, the routine. Brittany ordering books and makeup and food delivery from her phone. Lisa scheduling another minor remodel for the upstairs guest bath. $1,000 light fixture because warm gold is trending again. I said nothing. I signed nothing. I waited. Then, on a quiet Monday, I made the final changes. I logged into the accounts and disabled the automatic payments. Just the ones they didn't even know were happening. Brittany's college installment. Lisa's SUV lease. The insurance bundling that kept everything running smooth and cheap. Gone. Just like that. No notes left. No confrontation. Not out of pettiness. But because I needed to know what they would do without the machine quietly running beneath their feet. Without the current they never acknowledged but always relied on. By Friday, the wheels began to screech. Brittany texted me first. Just 3 words. Card declined. Why? I didn't answer. I was on a job site installing foundation beams with one of my foremen. I read the message, wiped my hands on my jeans, and got back to work. That night, Lisa brought it up. Not with anger. Not yet. Just that soft, questioning tone that women use when they're still pretending they don't notice the smoke rising. "Hey," she said over dinner, casually slicing into her salmon. "Brittany's school said something about a payment issue. Did you change accounts or something?" I sipped my wine. I might have. She waited for more. I didn't offer it. Eventually she laughed a little and said, "Just don't forget. That's time sensitive. Okay?" I nodded. "I know." That was all. She smiled, a little tight, and went back to eating. But I saw the first thread pull loose from the seam. The next week, I removed my name from the household utility accounts. Not canceled, just replaced the responsible party. Lisa would get the notifications now. The missed bills. The surcharges if payments were late. I didn't announce it. I just stopped being the background. And then came the lease renewal for Lisa's SUV. I had co-signed that car. Of course I had. It made sense back then, good rates, shared liability. She loved that car. Called it her independence. Ironic now. The dealership called her directly. Said the bank flagged the account. Needed a new guarantor or payment in full. She called me at work, voice tight but trying to stay light. "Hey, babe? They're saying the car lease isn't going through. Something about the guarantor status being withdrawn. That doesn't make sense, right?" I paused. Let the silence speak for me. Then I said, "It makes sense." "What do you mean?" I removed my name. Silence. Then a laugh that didn't reach her throat. "Wait, why? I mean, we share everything, Mike. This is sudden." I wanted to say, "No, it isn't. It's been happening for years." This is just the first time you felt it. But I didn't say that. Instead, I said, figure it out, Lisa. It's your car. She hung up without replying. That weekend, Brittany came home from school. She walked through the front door with tension in her shoulders. Not the dramatic kind, but the defensive kind. She dropped her bag, didn't greet me, walked straight into the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. Lisa was already there, scrolling through something on her phone. She didn't look up when Brittany said, flatly, my tuition didn't go through. Lisa nodded. I know. I'm calling tomorrow. I got a hold warning. They're freezing my classes if it's not paid by Monday. A beat. Then Brittany turned to me. What's going on? I looked at her. Really looked at her. This girl I had driven to ballet when she was 9. This girl I had waited outside of ERs for, paid for retainers, SAT tutors, spring trips, orthodontists, laptops, therapy. She was wearing shoes I bought, under a roof I owned, sipping water from a filter I installed. She stared at me like I was a stranger. I said calmly, you'll need to call your college. Arrange a payment plan. Her brow creased. You always pay the installment. I nodded. Not anymore. She blinked. What? I stood, set my coffee mug in the sink, rinsed it. Lisa finally looked up. Mike, can we talk? I dried my hands. Sure. Talk. In private. I laughed once, low. No need. It's all been public, hasn't it? Brittany crossed her arms. So what, you're punishing us now? I turned to her. I'm correcting a system. Lisa stepped forward. Michael, come on. We've had a rhythm for years. If something's wrong, let's. Something's always been wrong, I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I've been treated like a wallet. That's not new. But now I'm closing it. Brittany scoffed. Over a joke? That dinner? I nodded. Yes, because it wasn't a joke. It was the truth finally said out loud. Silence. Thick like wet cement. Lisa's voice softened. Mike, you can't just pull everything. I didn't pull anything, I said. I just stopped holding it up. And in that moment I saw it. Not anger. Confusion. As if they were standing in a house where the lights had always worked, and now they flicked the switch and nothing came on. They didn't understand how things ran. They thought money arrived like wind. That food appeared by magic. That tuition covered itself because the digits on the screen never ran out. They didn't know what I did, what I'd always done. They never asked, because it didn't matter until it stopped. They saw me now, not as the man who ruined their rhythm, but as the rhythm itself. I walked past them, toward the door. Where are you going? Lisa asked. To work. Brittany's voice was cold. So that's it. I paused. No, that's the beginning. Then I left. They didn't panic immediately. That surprised me. Lisa still moved through the house like a queen out of routine. She lit candles in the living room at dusk, played the same Spotify playlists while cooking, texted with the same clipped smile on her face. For a few days, she behaved like this was a weather pattern. Something passing, inconvenient, but temporary. A brief storm before I relented. She didn't know I had already relented too many times to count. She didn't know this was me finally withdrawing the last inch of my silence. On Wednesday, she left a checkbook on the kitchen island. Her pen rested on top of it. Her way of saying, you've made your point. Now fix it. I didn't touch it. That night, she said, I need you to sign the lease extension on the Tahoe. They won't move forward without it. I replied, then they won't move forward. She blinked. Don't be petty. I met her eyes, slow and steady. Don't be entitled. It wasn't the tone she was used to. Not from me. She didn't push further. The next day, Brittany called me. Not texted. Called. That alone was telling. I was in my truck between job sites. I stared at the name on the screen for a full 10 seconds before answering. Hello. Her voice was measured, rehearsed. Hi. I talked to financial services. They said if payment doesn't come through by next Monday, they'll drop me from enrollment. I'm aware. She waited, expecting more. When none came, she said, So, can you fix it? No. A pause. Then her voice sharpened. You just won't. You're seriously doing this to your own family? No, I said. I'm no longer doing everything for my family. Another pause. Then, lower. What is wrong with you? I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because she didn't hear the echo in her own question. She hung up after saying, "You're pathetic." I drove the rest of the way in silence. That night, Lisa tried again, this time with warmth. She cooked my favorite meal, lit the fire in the den, poured my drink without asking. I knew the dance. I choreographed it for years. We ate in the kind of quiet that pretends to be peace. Halfway through the meal, she said, "Look, I know you've been feeling unappreciated. Maybe I've let things slide too long. I'm sorry about the joke at the dinner. Brittany was out of line too, but you're overcorrecting." I chewed slowly, swallowed. Then I said, "Am I?" She set her fork down. "Yes, it's been a rough couple of weeks. We're all stressed. But this freezing tuition, the car, the cards, it's not fixing anything." "I'm not trying to fix anything," I said. "I'm stopping something." "Stopping what?" "Being used." Her face flushed. She reached for her wine, sipped it too fast. "Mike, that's not fair. You're not used." I looked her in the eye. "Then why do things only collapse when I stop paying?" That landed. She didn't reply. Not right away. Instead, she said, "We're a team." I nodded. No, we were a team. A team shares the load. This was something else. This was me funding the illusion of family while you and Brittany kept score. Lisa went quiet. Really quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't planning a rebuttal. The kind that's staring at the foundation and seeing the cracks for the first time. "You didn't even ask me about the Tahoe," I added. "You just assumed." Her voice dropped. "We've always done things this way. You never said no before." "I never said anything before," I corrected. "And you mistook that for agreement." She turned her head, blinking quickly. I could see the glassiness beginning to rise in her eyes. But I wasn't moved by it. Not anymore. Because now I knew. They didn't just expect me to provide. They assumed I existed for that purpose alone. Lisa tried one last time that night. In bed, her hand reached for mine under the sheets. "I miss you," she whispered. "I've been here the whole time," I said, and I pulled my hand away. The real unraveling began the following Monday. Brittany's college portal locked her out. Her email was full of warning notices. Her friend group, the privileged daughters of dentists, lawyers, tech investors, started making noise about unpaid balances and dropped classes. Brittany didn't come home that night. She stayed at a friend's house. I didn't ask which one. Lisa texted me, "You have to fix this." I replied, "No, I don't." She didn't respond. By Wednesday, the heat was rising. Not just emotional. Real heat. AC maintenance. The system was due for annual servicing. The technician called me. I told him to speak with the homeowner. He replied, "That's you, sir." I said, "Not anymore." Then I gave him Lisa's number and hung up. Thursday night, Lisa sat me down. No makeup, no armor, just a robe, her hair up, her eyes tired. "Mike, what are you doing?" I looked at her, holding the mirror up. She shook her head, tears breaking now. "You're burning everything down." "No," I said calmly. "I'm stepping out of a house already on fire." The next morning, Brittany came home. She didn't knock, just slammed the door and marched into the kitchen. Her face was pale with fury. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she snapped. Lisa was at the sink. She froze. Brittany threw her phone on the counter. "They dropped me. Dropped me. Do you understand what that means? My schedule's gone. My seat's gone. I'm locked out until next semester if I'm lucky." I said nothing. She turned to me. "You're ruining my life." I met her stare. "You're experiencing your life. For the first time without me funding the version you like." She stepped forward. "You said you were family." "I was," I said, "until family became code for free ride." Lisa finally stepped between us. Mike, please. Tell her the truth, I said, staring at Lisa. Tell her who paid. For the car. For the school. For the clothes. The therapy. The braces. The phone. The laptop. The vacations. The dinners. Tell her who kept it running. Lisa opened her mouth. Closed it. Brittany turned to her. Mom. Silence. Then, finally, Lisa whispered. He did. That was the first honest sentence I'd heard in months. Brittany's mouth curled. So what, now you want a medal? I laughed once, short, bitter. No, just an exit. She stormed upstairs. Lisa followed her after a minute. I sat down in the den, the fire crackling quietly, and felt the strangest thing. Relief. Not joy. Not vindication. Just relief. They were finally seeing it. Not the money. Not the absence of it. But the structure underneath. Me. The background they had painted over. The beam they leaned on. The silence that supported the roof. A few days later, Lisa tried again. This time with softness again. She brought down an old photo album. One we hadn't opened in years. Pictures of Brittany at 10. Lisa's birthday at a vineyard. A beach trip from 3 summers ago. Smiles frozen in amber. She laid it in my lap. I know we've been blind. I know. But does none of this matter? I touched the photo of Brittany blowing out candles. My hand was on her shoulder in the picture. I remembered that moment. I'd taken a call from a supplier right after. I set the album aside. It mattered to me, I said. But I don't think it mattered to you. Lisa closed her eyes. A tear slid down. I never meant to make you feel used. You didn't make me feel anything, I said. You just lived in a world where I didn't need to be anything else. That night, I canceled the last shared card. The one they used for groceries. The text came the next morning from Lisa. We can't buy food. I replied, use your own card. No answer. But the photo album was gone from the coffee table. I guess even nostalgia has a limit. Here's what I realized. They never thought I'd stop. Because good men don't stop, right? They endure. They provide. They carry weight until their backs break. That's the story we're fed. The noble silence of male sacrifice. But sacrifice without recognition is servitude. And I wasn't interested in being a servant anymore. So when people say I overreacted, when Lisa's sister sent that message saying, you're hurting your own family to prove a point, I don't flinch, because it was never about proving a point. It was about proving I existed, not just as income, not just as insurance, but as a man, partner, a father in action if not in blood. I did everything, until I did nothing, and only then did they notice the difference. Funny, isn't it? What gets seen once it's gone. There's a quiet that enters a house after power is cut. Not the silence of rest, but the silence of exposure. When every appliance dies, every light fades, and you're left hearing things you never noticed before. The hum of tension behind walls. The creak of wood adjusting to emptiness. The groan of a place no longer fed. That was our house in the weeks that followed. The SUV sat idle in the driveway. The lease was terminated. Lisa never said it out loud, but I saw the envelope arrive. Return request from the dealership, followed by a downgrade rental. No more auto start from her phone. No more heated seats. Just a beige crossover with no name and a monthly payment I didn't sign for. Brittany's car, same story. Her fuel card had been suspended long before, and without it, she stopped coming home on weekends. Or maybe it was because I stopped calling her when she didn't. The fridge grew emptier. Grocery runs happened less often. Lisa paid now, with her own card, and I noticed the brands changed. No more imported wine. No more boutique cheeses with French names. The laundry detergent was generic. The almond milk became 2% again. But they didn't complain. Because complaints require a kind of arrogance they couldn't afford anymore. The tone shifted in every room. No more jokes. No more wallet references. No more sideways digs at how Dad always pays when the bill came. In fact, no more bills handed to me at all. When we ate out, Lisa reached for her purse. Brittany stopped ordering appetizers. I had become something different. Not the villain, not the martyr, but the mirror they were now forced to look into. They saw what I had seen for years, just from the other side. The engine they had ridden was gone. Now they walked, and I watched. Not with cruelty, not with glee, with distance. Lisa tried to keep rhythm. She sent me articles again. 7 ways to repair a marriage after financial resentment. Forward from her therapist. She left a highlighted book on my nightstand. The Invisible Man in the Marriage Bed. She made dinner more often. Cooked old favorites. Wore the perfume I liked. Unprompted. She smiled at me differently. Less like a performance, more like a question. But I didn't answer it. Because she wasn't asking the right one. Brittany did. Eventually. It happened on a Sunday. She came home unannounced, dropped her bag at the door like she used to, walked into the living room and said, flatly, "Can we talk?" I nodded. She sat. Her hands fidgeted with her sleeve. Her nails weren't manicured anymore. "I'm not here to beg," she said. "Good. I just want to understand." I said nothing. Let her speak. She looked at me, really looked at me. "You were always quiet, but you never stopped showing up. And I guess I didn't think about what that cost you." Still I said nothing. She looked down. "You were there. All those years. And I don't think I ever once said thank you." "You didn't." Her face tensed. "But I didn't ask for all that either." I leaned forward. "No. You expected it." She blinked. "You didn't ask for help. You built your life with the assumption it would be handed to you. You mocked the man who handed it. And now that it's gone, you've come to ask why the hand closed." She looked like she wanted to argue, but the words never came. Instead, she whispered, "I miss it. The money. No, the feeling of knowing someone was there." I nodded. "That's what I gave you. Not just tuition. Not just clothes. I gave you presence. I gave you permanence." "I didn't know how to say thank you," she said, her voice small. "That's because you never planned to." And that was it. That was the moment she understood. She stood, quietly, said, "I'm sorry." Then she left. It didn't change much. Not in practice. But in posture, something shifted. She didn't speak to me as a function anymore. She spoke to me like someone who had once drowned in comfort and now understood what kept her afloat. That was enough. Lisa, though, she lingered in the in-between. Some days she'd try. Other days, she'd retreat into silence. Once, I caught her crying over an old bank statement. The ones she used to leave unopened in drawers. Now she read them like autopsies. She stopped asking me to make things normal again, because she knew this was normal. A world where effort had weight, where contribution was measured, where love wasn't extracted like oil from a silent well, but offered, asked for, acknowledged. I finalized the asset transfers at the end of the quarter. The house? Fully under the trust. The business? Moved. The estate plan? Clean. No shared obligations remained. Lisa's name was no longer tied to anything that required my labor to sustain. And when she opened the email from the estate lawyer, her face changed. Not in fury, in confusion. The same confusion a child wears when they realize bedtime stories aren't real. That the monster under the bed was never there. But the man who checked for it every night, he was. And now he doesn't come in the room anymore. That week she didn't light candles. She didn't play music. She didn't ask me to sign anything. She sat beside me on the couch one evening, her body careful not to touch mine, and asked, "Do you still love me?" I turned toward her. "I loved who I thought you were." Her mouth trembled. "And now I see clearly." She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just nodded, like a person who knows they lost something they can never describe but will always feel the shape of. We slept in the same bed, but she stayed curled at the far edge. Not cold, just aware. I was no longer a fixture. I was no longer the background hum. I was a man. One who had learned, finally, what silence cost. A month passed. The bills came in her name. The repairs were scheduled by her hand. Brittany didn't visit as often, but when she did, She knocked. She said hello. She said thank you when she left. Not out of fear. Out of recognition. They weren't warm those weeks. But they were honest. And sometimes that's the best you can hope for. People say I should forgive. That I should see how hard it is for them to adjust. That a real man would return once the point was made. But that's not the lesson. Because the moment you go back to carrying what broke your back, they forget how heavy it ever was. So I don't carry it anymore. I don't refill the fridge. I don't approve the school applications. I don't guarantee the lease. I don't sign the checks. And no one laughs about wallets at dinner anymore. That joke died in silence. It died when I left the room that night, and they finally saw what had been holding them up. Me. Not a name. Not a title. Just a man who loved too quietly and finally chose to stop. So tell me, was I wrong? To let the silence speak louder than words ever had? To pull back not out of cruelty, but to let them hear the cost of the comfort they mocked? Would you have stayed? Would you have kept paying for the same insult year after year? Or would you have done what I did? Walked out of the room and never looked back? Because that's what I did. And the silence that followed was the first time I felt free.